Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 405 to 406 for the 4 to 5th April and of 2023. And welcome back to the DPA War channel, because we have been hextomeld, and so this is the first video produced just for DPA War channel since the hacking. And first thing first is the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians seems, I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like they have started their counteroffensive. And this comes with a massive range of reports of Ukrainian attacks that is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry and its subsidiary forces in this area here, in the Kreminna, there is the Kupyansk Front and Avdiivka Front region. There is some attempts to attack within the Kreminna Front region, but has been thwarted. There is some counter-offensive also being reported around the Avdiivka region, and also within the West Donetsk region, as well as a little bit in the Zaporizhzhia line. So there is multiple areas that it seems like the Ukrainians, there is reports of Ukrainian DRGs or recon forces, or it could be assault. There is seems to point that this is actually the beginning of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Seems like it. I'm not 100% sure. So let's start off with the something new. We start off with the Kupyansk Front. At the Kupyansk Front, we have Ukrainian actions of DRG forces or sabotage reconnaissance group has been reported by the Russian Defense Ministry on the 5th of April over the past day at Mesutivka around here. And then there is also being operated at Persheshtravneve, as well as at Novoselivsky, Miaso, Zarivka, as well as at Andriivka. So these all coming part of the same reports, which means that there is Ukrainian action moving in this direction. And so it seems, of course, people will say that it's just recce or recon forces, but the Russians seems to always call any assault operations as a recon. So yeah, so that seems to be the case. And there's also a massive amount of shelling around all these regions. There is shelling being reported by the Russian Defense Ministry on the 4th at Voreshna, at Kreminna on the 5th, might be relating to the attacks fighting around the Mesutivka region, at Sinkivka on the 4th, and there is shelling at Timkovka, shelling being reported at Berestove, Stemekivka on both days. It seems like a routine. They always shell Stemekivka for the fun of it. And there's also fighting reported by the Deep State UA that the Russian forces seems to have intensified assault operations around this area here, which I'm not too sure, because it doesn't seem to really show that clearly by other sources. And there is also geolocation of Russian forces at this position on the 4th by Deep State UA, and at this position here. So two locations that seems to suggest where the front line actually is. So I just adjusted the volume a little bit, so seems like a little bit loud. And so that's the information coming from the Kupyansk Zaporizhzhia Front. And moving into another part where the Ukraine seems to be launching attack is around the West Donetsk Front, where there is fighting reported towards Mikhailsky, towards Volodymyrivka, and at Boyeda. So information is coming from the Russian Defense Ministry. They reported Ukrainian sabotage recon group being intercepted at Vladimirovka, which is at Volodymyrivka, and Nikolskoye, which is actually Mikhailsky, and Menoye. Menoye is actually all the way here at the Zaporizhzhia region. So, and then there is also the one at Boyeda is actually reported by War Gonzo, where they say that the Ukrainians have been successful in recapture some of the lost positions in this area south of Kreminna. And there is also shelling report as usual by the Russian Defense Ministry at Mikhailsky and Voleda. And there's also fighting continues being reported at Marinka region on the 4th and on the 5th. information from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. North of it, there is fighting reported at Krasnohorivka, according to War Gonzo. And since we just now touched on Zaporizhzhia, going to the Zaporizhzhia, we have this attack at Merne, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, in this direction. However, not too sure. This seems a bit small. Maybe it's really some recon forces. And the Russians, however, also was reported to have an attack from Dorozhyanka towards Huaypole, according to War Gonzo, which is moving northward in this direction. Geolocation of Russian forces has been reported. This is actually the day before this, third. Yeah, by this day, anyway, the Russian forces is here. So they are moving northward. There is shelling reported at Shebaki by the Russian Defense Ministry on the 4th, at Orekhiv, as well as at Novopil on the 5th. All this information coming from the Russian Defense Ministry. There's Zaporizhzhia. And moving on to the Bakhmut Front, everyone's favorite. And before we go to Bakhmut, actually, I want to talk about something else. There is Ukrainian information. The Ukrainian Air Force spokesman talked about the Russians actually used 20 guided bombs. So these guided bombs is actually the FAB 500. It's just a dumb bomb. But what happened is that the Russians actually modified it, and now it can actually fly, or rather glide. So it can glide up to 70 kilometers, and the Russians are using 20 bombs a day across the entire front line. And these bombs are actually used, launched from Sukhoi 35 and Sukhoi 34 aircraft, and they usually launch beyond the zone of the umbrella of the air defense, the Ukrainian air defense. So the Ukrainian air defense cannot actually intercept all these aircraft that is actually throwing all these bombs. And this is a threat that the Ukrainians acknowledge that they have no response towards. They have no way of stopping this bombing by the Russian side. And this is increasing, and they are being used currently in Kherson, Zaporizhzhia region, as well as the appearance at the Voleda region. So I believe from the Russian pro-Russian side, they are also talking about this bomb being used in Bakhmut. So I think the usage of this bomb will just increase more than 20 a day, and the Russians have countless of such bombs. So it's just a matter of whether they can modify in time. There is also news of the Ukrainians by the United 24 media reporting that the Ukrainians have launched the river fleet. So instead of the navy, which is actually in the ocean, they actually launched the river version of the navy, and this is based on the American Dauntless Sea Ark and the Gyoza warship. And so these ships will be deployed along the Dnipro River, which actually is pretty long. It goes from Kiev all the way to the southern side to the Kherson region. So the river actually goes really far. It actually goes from here, this entire river route. And so the Ukrainians have their interest to actually have a navy, patrolling and controlling this region here. And this river region is entirely controlled by the Ukrainian side. The Russians do not have any fleet of any sort to actually go into the river, because going to the river is actually risking death. And since we are also talking about Ukrainian information, the Russian Ka-52 has been shot down over eastern Ukraine, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. So let's go to Bakhmut. So I have made a report on Bakhmut, the situation. You can also catch it over there at the DPA's main channel. And significant is that the Russians have captured the Bakhmut 1 railway station. And this actually comes with the capture of the entire region here that was previously not under Russian control. The Wagner forces have pushed very quickly in this area here and captured multiple streets. So it's not just one building, two buildings, it's entire streets, long streets of territory being captured. And they are now at actually at the edge of the railway station, the Bakhmut railway station here. And the speed of the advance suggests that the Ukrainians actually withdrawn from this territory, because maybe they need to fall back to a new line of defense. So I believe that the new line of defense is likely to be along the railway track, and this is actually reported by many people to be the case, that the Ukrainians will actually fall back to the rear of the to behind on the western side of the railway track, because they are struggling to hold the lines, and they are kind of encircled in multiple locations, it seems. There's a possible salient here. There's already a salient here. So, and the area here, was also a salient, with the Russians actually pushing in this direction previously, which is why they decided to just give up the entire area here. So, and there's currently fighting is still ongoing in central Bakhmut. This was information from the 4th. The front line here by Deep State UA have not really changed. It still has been like this. Perhaps over the next 24 hours, we will see further updates in terms of the front lines. And in the southern part of the central part of Bakhmut, we have fighting reported at Svobody Street on the 4th. Fighting is at Vasilia Pashena Street on the 4th as well. Bakhmutska Street on the 4th. And in the latest information, we have information that the fighting is now in the area of the Avdiivka Stadium, and fighting is along the Kosonskogo Street. Detailed information like this when we have it, is actually good. Usually it's very kind of a by luck thing. So the luck only comes on the 4th. We haven't got the information of more details of where the fighting on the 5th. So this is the best that we have, with the Russian pushing as further Svobody Street, Vasilia Pashina Street, Vasilia Bakhmutska Street, over at the Avdiivka region, Kokoskongo Street. So if you look at this arrow, you can see that the Ukrainians salient here will have to be taken care of by the Ukrainians. They have to withdraw away from this region and put a new line of defense, maybe along this street here, over Kovalska Street, or they can actually hold this high ground, which is actually kind of not a good idea nowadays. So what happens is that the Russians has also deployed the TOS-1A flamethrower systems within Bakhmut city itself, and they have been shelling high-rise buildings region like such, and when they do bombard this area with thermobaric missiles, basically everyone dies. Everyone in this area is gone, or they will be severely injured. They will be out of action. So which is also possibly why the push, the advance now within Bakhmut seems to have sped up, because the Russian military starting to give the Wagner group even higher support in terms of artillery and air support. And there's also a possibility, I personally suspect, that the airborne forces is now involved in the siege of Bakhmut itself. So in the southwest of Bakhmut, we have fighting reported near the MiG-17 monument. This is also reported the next day by Ryba. Both information by Ryba. So the fighting is still ongoing within this area here, and the Ukrainians are holding a very strong line. They have not given up this area here. Possibly continuous reinforcement has been arriving at this juncture to control this street. So because this highway, some of people might think that it's useless, but I believe that it's still being used. So the reason is because the highway actually goes all the way to Ivaniske. So this highway goes to Ivaniske, and from Ivaniske you can actually go along the dirt road to Chasivia, towards Chasivia. Or you can go down this road and try to cross. I'm not sure if they have a pontoon here, but they can actually go around and actually go through the dirt road and still go into Chasivia. So there is a few ways this road can be used, which is why the Ukrainians are desperate to keep the line of communications open over here. And based on some footages, the Kromove road seems to be still open as well. So all three roads of Ukrainian they can reinforce or resupply the troops is still ongoing, and all of them is still open at this moment, even though there might be some limited fire control that's on this road by the Russian side, the Ukrainians seems to be also still be able to use this road to do withdrawal if they need to. So the entire theory that the Russians like to keep a route open for them, for the enemies to retreat, might actually be true. Because the Russians could very well put a lot of force to actually just push in if they chose to. If they want to, they can really cut the road by putting overwhelming force in this area, but they did not. They chose to focus within the city and to squeeze the Ukrainians outwards from Bakhmut, instead of really encircle them entirely. So so the encirclement, all this pincer doesn't seem to really want to encircle. Rather, they are just threatening to encircle. And fighting is reported at Ivanivsky, according to Ryba and War Gonzo on the 4th, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry corroborated this on the 5th of April. In the north, the fighting on the outskirts of Bakhmut, the main fighting is actually in Kromove region and Bodanivka. Ryba reported fighting at Kromove, and Deep State UA reported it as well on the 5th, with the Russians putting pressure at Kromove, as this will be able to cut out this dirt road out of or Kromove road to Chasivya. So this will allow the Russians to actually cut off this two road, which is why this pressure is on here. And however, fighting at Bodanivka seems to be pretty intense. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported that there is offensive operations in Bodanivka area, and Ryba also reported this as well. Then there is the information was reported again by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 5th, which means the Russian forces is actually making some push in the Bodanivka region. And further up north, there is fighting reported at Orikovo Vasilivka. However, this is reported by War Gonzo, and War Gonzo being our secondary source, do take this with a pinch of salt. And geolocation, however, of front line is actually reported here by Deep State UA, and this actually shows that the front line here does indeed is around the forest line, and maybe the Russians are not really anywhere in this area here. So furthermore, let's see anything more on the Bakhmut front. Okay, that's all from the Bakhmut front, and I think that's all from the Bakhmut front. There is a Ukrainian MiG-29 shot down over Selidove, according to the Russian Defense Ministry on the 5th of April's report. And moving into the Avdiivka Front. The Avdiivka Front, the biggest news is actually around Kanyamka region. So there is fighting reported at Kanyamka, according to Myro Shinikov, on the 5th of April. And however, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry and Ryba actually talk about fighting at Avdiivka. Ryba actually reported that the Russian forces actually broke through a certain line of defense of Kanyamka, and it seems like the push is actually towards Avdiivka is actually from here. So the fighting at Avdiivka might actually be referring to this area here, rather than the usual. We usually put it in the southwest. We put the fighting at Avdiivka in this direction, but it seems like this push here has been cancelled. There is no more reports of the fighting moving towards this direction. So looks like the Russians are now pushing on the other side, which means that any Ukrainian forces that they have been pushing to guard this area, now they have to reroute and push it all the way towards the Kayamka direction. So who knows, the Russians might actually decide to attack here again after this redeployment happens. This could happen, this is just war tactics. Anyway, there is fighting reported at Zhivany on the 4th, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Fighting is at Pervomaisky as well on the same day. And further up north of the Avdiivka region, we have fighting reported at Novokalinove, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 4th and on the 5th. And War Gonzo seems to echo the information from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, but they don't want to make it so obvious, so they say Karami. Which is actually just next to Novokalinove. So I think the push is actually just here. Nothing very significant. There is, however, Russian positions being geolocated at this position, according to Deep State UA on the 4th, which actually do suggest that the Russian forces actually do have this entire area of the forest line and the closest possible Ukrainian position is actually along this road here, with the Russians actually holding this line here. So yeah, so that's on the Avdiivka front. And interestingly, nearby at the New York front, just south of New York, there was the Ukrainian attack. This is also part of the series of reports of Ukrainians launching attacks all across Ukraine's front line. And this is actually north of Novoselivka, south of New York. And this is reported by SITREP maps. So apparently the Ukrainians managed to capture some position, maybe some defensive position on the Russian side have been taken over by the Ukrainian side as they push south from the New York region in a surprise attack, if you ask me. So the defense around this area, I believe, is not by the Russian troops. I think it's the Donetsk People's Republic militias that is holding the lines here. And moving away from there, we go to the only front that we have not covered, which is the Kreminna Siversk region. So in the Siversk region, in the Siversk front, there is shelling reported at Siversk and Ryhorivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. And there is some fighting south of Spurny. This is actually very interesting because it's actually a bit specific from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, because they usually are not so specific. So they say that the Russians have an unsuccessful offensive operation south of Spurny, and which means the fighting is now in the south of Spurny, which is kind of interesting because they usually do not give this kind of information for the public to know. So yeah, so that's a good change, but of course this is not going to last. And there in the Kreminna region, there is also fighting reported south of Kreminna, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Wargonzo simply just called it Serebranski Forest, which is accurate. And on the next day, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry simply just used Serebranski Forestry to describe the Russian attack within this area here. And there's an interesting information coming from Deep State UA. They said that they geolocated the front line around this area, this junction here, within the forestry, which actually shows that our front line is actually pretty there, more or less there. And but they did make an interesting note. They say that there is a strange video in the forest of Kreminna where the enemy tank, which is the Russian tank, and the Russian IFV, the infantry fighting vehicle, arrived. They fired at their something VOP. I have no idea what is this maybe just their defensive position, and then retreated. And then they describe this as a tactic similar to nomad raids, basically just raids used by the Russians elsewhere in this front line, which means that this actually corroborates some of this idea that the Russians actually just do hit and run, and then they just go. So they are not trying to push and conquer the entire forest. It seems like they're just there to hold a position. So the Russians just hold this position, and then they just went in, shoot at the Ukrainians, and they just fail. And then the entire objective is just to hold the line. So this might be the first, pro-Ukrainian indication that the Russians are not looking to take over certain territory. They seem to be deliberately holding the line, and they are just going in to kill the Ukrainians, and then they just leave. Might be so. The shelling reported at Dibrova, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, and the press center of the center group have certain more information. They say that the Ukrainians actually attempted to conduct an offensive, and but they are spotted, and the Russians actually use the Grad, so they say tube artillery. So these are rocket attacks on the of the center group of forces to overwhelm the Ukrainian forces, to cause losses, and they force them to disperse within the wooded area, which means this is also another sign or signal that the Ukrainians seems to be launching, or just launched, or starting to launch some kind of offensive. And the grouping of forces probably got spotted near Dibrova. It could be here as well, that they want to push in, and then they got shelled by rocket artilleries, and this caused the entire offensive to be abandoned. So yeah, this is another signal, which is why I say it looks like the Ukrainian counteroffensive has begun, but it's just that it is still a bit fake, because this is just the first day. and we will know better as in the coming days to see if the attacks, all these offensive operation or the DRG operations are sustained. If it's very sustained, then it's likely to be an offensive. And there is also fighting reported at Toske, according to Maroshenikov and Wogonzo. Wogonzo reported on the 4th. Maroshenikov, the pro-Ukrainian source, reported on the 5th. And fighting is also reported at Terny, according to Wogonzo. Shelling is being reported at Yampolivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. And so in this area here, other than the fighting within the Siversk forestry region and shelling at near Dibrova, they are also pushing Toske and Terny region. So yeah, so let's see, because all these push are very suspicious because the front line never changes. Yeah, so and then further up north within the Kreminna front, we have shelling reported at Nevsky on the 4th and on the 5th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. And then there is fighting reported east of Nevsky, according to pro-Russian source Ryba, in the area of the Zuravka Guli. And the Ukrainian Defense Ministry also corroborated this information on the 5th of April, that there is fighting within this area here. So the Russians are still trying to capture this valley, perhaps, maybe, while they shell Nevsky. Or maybe the shelling of Nevsky is actually also here, where the Ukrainian forces are. That could also be possible. And there's fighting reported at Makievka. According to Ryba, they say that the Russian troops are breaking through the defenses. So, but they always say that, so I'm not too sure whether it's true or not. So there is some push in this direction. So in the Kreminna front, we can see that the push is very much a repeat of what I said for the past 3 months, 2-3 months. So nothing very special about this. So that's all from the Kreminna front, and I believe I covered everything. So this is the summary for the day of 405 to 406 for the 4th to 5th of April. Do press the like button, subscribe if you are new to this channel. Do share it with everywhere, to everyone. Just spam it, just share it to all your social media account, and I'll see you in the next update.